Hello again, I am Blunty. It has been 260 days since the PlayStation 5 launched, and you still cannot use one of its basic advertised features, and that is the simplicity of just expanding your storage so you can have more games saved at the same time or installed at the same time. It's just, they still can't do it. How hopeless are Sony engineers that they still haven't been able to turn on an industry standard storage solution in the form of their M.2 slot. It is an industry standard, and they still haven't been able to figure out how to get the damn thing to work and let customers use it. Hopeless. Except you can now, if. There's an if and a but coming, but we'll get to that. 260 days since launch, and they still have not enabled the M.2 slot. The whole point that I was excited about the M.2 slot is M.2 is an industry standard. It's been used in PCs for years and years and years and years. There are lots of drives out there, lots of high-speed drives that would, fulfill the requirements here, and Sony just haven't switched it on yet. Because, I don't know why. Are they incompetent? Can they not get it to work right? Did they make some massive, idiotic engineering mistake that they're trying to compensate for? Who knows? I can't figure out why they haven't been able to turn it on yet. You know what had expandable storage from day one? The Xbox Series X. You just plug in the little Seagate thing right in the back there, and it works. Just works. Sony, what are you doing? However, yesterday afternoon, I was in a briefing for a bunch of Seagate's new products or updates to their existing product line as well. I may speak about those in the future if they send me review samples or something, but there was a question that one of my peers asked after the presentation to do with their new M.2 drives. Their new crazy fast things. What's the model number? The FireCuda 530 with heatsink. They have one with and without a heatsink, and these new ones are very, very, very fast. How fast? Well, up to 7,300 megabits per second. That's pretty fast. But the question in the call was asked, and I thought this was a stupid question at the time because I thought there's no way they're going to answer this, but the question was asked, are these going to be compatible with the PlayStation 5's requirements? And seeing as, like I said in the opening of the video, the PlayStation 5 doesn't support any drives at all at the moment. Sony just haven't been talking about it at all. So I thought, that's a bit of a dumb question. Number one, we're talking to Seagate, so they're not going to answer on Sony's behalf, are they? But I was wrong. It wasn't a dumb question. It was a very good question because they did answer it, much to my surprise. They said, actually, yes, we've been talking to Sony, we've been testing with Sony, and we're pleased to tell you today, and this is the first time I've heard any manufacturer of SSD drives mention this, and they didn't tell me I wasn't allowed to say it or anything, so I'm saying it. Yes, the FireCuda 530 with heatsink will be compatible with the PlayStation 5. So will the one without the heatsink, but in Sony's own notes, which we'll get to in a moment, they do specify you're going to want one with a heatsink to try and maintain that peak performance so it doesn't sort of overheat and throttle down and affect your gaming performance, and then you might blame Sony's PS5 for that, which you should, because if it can't handle a SSD drive without a heatsink on it, then there's an engineering problem there somewhere to do with cooling or heat spreading, which they should have accounted for, just like pretty much every motherboard you buy these days with a high performance Gen 4x4 M.2 slot on it has a heat spreader that goes over the top of the two main slots on the front of the board. So I thought this was very interesting information. I thought, should I make a video about it? Is there enough here to make a video about it? And I was like, nah. But I got up this morning and I hit the news rather coincidentally, or maybe not, that Sony have actually unlocked that M.2 slot for beta testers. You have to be part of the beta program to actually utilize the slot at all at the moment. So I'm going to bring up their beta page here for beta users, how to add an M.2 SSD to PS5 console. So they've got the installation instructions up here, but they also have the minimum specifications you're aiming for. So let's take a look at those. Interface, PCIe Gen 4x4, of course we knew that already, M.2 NVMe SSD, no surprises there. Capacity, 250 gigabytes up to 4 terabytes, which covers pretty much everything that's available on the market right now anyway. Cooling structure, this is what I was talking about, using the M.2 SSD with your PS5 console requires effective heat dissipation with a cooling structure, such as a heatsink. You can attach one to your M.2 SSD yourself, and there are third-party little heat sinks and stuff you can sort of pop on the top there with some thermal adhesive and stuff like that. I haven't tried one of those myself. I have to wonder about the efficiency of a situation like that. So buyer beware in that situation. I suppose you're probably better off just buying one with a heatsink pre-attached, like the EK designed one that Seagate have on their new ones, because EK, leadership in cooling and stuff, and Seagate, leadership in SSDs, probably a pretty safe bet to go that way, I reckon. Either single-sided format or dollar sub format. There are also m.2 SSDs that have cooling structures, such as heatsinks built in. Here's the interesting part. A lot of people were thinking and assuming and going out there and just claiming that the reason Sony are dragging their feet on this, the reason Sony seems so inept at just turning this feature on like they promised 260 plus days ago, is because, they're just waiting for high-performance drives to come into the market. Nothing out there is fast enough yet. They have to wait till the drive's out there. They can't do it yet. Well, actually they can, because it says right here on Sony's own page, sequential write speed 5,500 megabits per second or faster is recommended. We've had drives that can do that speed on the market for quite some time now, Sony fanboys, so that's not what's been holding Sony back. It's their own ineptitude still. And then we have some measurements, total structure, including the cooler. And that's something that also came up from when we were speaking to Seagate last night. The heatsink on their new drive just barely qualifies. There's apparently a very narrow width allowance in Sony's design, because Sony are inept engineers. So a lot of SSDs with significant coolers on them might be just a little bit too wide to actually fit in that socket properly, apparently. So Seagate were very clear to mention that theirs does just fit. There is also a height limitation as well, so you've got to be careful about how high that heatsink is. Sony have really just... There are so many better ways to have engineered this slot. So many better ways to have engineered this slot to not have to worry this much about the dimensions of the thing. Later on in the same document, they go on to go, SIE cannot guarantee that all m.2 SSD drives meeting the described specifications will work with your console. So even if your drive meets the specifications Sony have just told you to meet, they're not guaranteeing that it's going to work. Why? I don't know. That seems ridiculous to me. That's just it's not our fault. It's just not our engineering that's at fault. I mean, that drive, meets all the specifications we told you about, but if it doesn't work, it's not our fault. Yes, it is, Sony, because I promise you that same drive will work in a standard slot in a PC, because it's a standard. I feel like that statement is setting up for Sony's sort of special approval, so manufacturers will have to pay Sony for some type of stamp to get on their product to be officially approved for the PlayStation 5, even though, again, the M.2 slot we're talking about, the NVMe drives we're talking about, are industry standards. So they're just trying to, I don't know whether they're trying to seed some fear, uncertainty, and doubt so they can make some extra money on the side by selling their own branded ones, or just selling with manufacturers that have paid Sony to get the Sony stamp of approval stamped on their stuff. You never know with Sony. Sony are dicks. They really are. And then they go on to describe the installation procedure, which I'm not going to go over here. But before we begin, what you'll need, a well-lit room with a table to work on. Doy. What are you going to do this in the back of a moving car? Number one, Phillips or crosshead screwdriver. You need a screwdriver just to install storage. You know what you don't need a screwdriver for? Installing extra storage on the Xbox One X. Just plug it in. Slot on the outside. A small flashlight. Optional, in brackets. So it's so badly designed. You need a screwdriver just to install this thing in the first place, which is going to scare off a lot of users. They don't want to take a screwdriver to their expensive console that's impossible to replace right now because scalpers are buying them all. And also, it's so badly designed, you're going to need a flashlight just to see what you're doing in this little crevice they've carved out for it that isn't big enough for who knows how many drives on the market that are perfectly fine in every other device they've been designed for. And if you're wondering, Blunty, are you going to test this out? Well, I could. The Seagate people are just so easy to work with. I could ask them to send me one of these drives and I could probably have one in my hand as soon as they become available on our shores. I don't know whether they're here yet. I forgot to ask about that. But I can't because for some reason Sony have not opened up beta access to anybody. The registration is open to players over the age of 18 in the US, Canada, Japan, the UK, Germany, and France. But nowhere else. Australians, you don't get beta access, so F us, I suppose, for some whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe our consumer protections are too strong in Australia and Sony are well, Sony are dicks. So instead of just trying to treat consumers with respect and dignity and operation under the Australian laws, they just said, well, it's too hard. No better access for Australians. Too hard. Too hard to be nice to the customers. I don't know what it is. But given Sony's extensive history of being dicks, it's very easy to assume the worst of them. So one would assume in the coming week or two, you'll see the bigger tech tubers out there who are based in one of these countries do some actual testing on these. Sony do also mention in their documents that they can't guarantee your game's even going to run properly at full speed off one of these drives because their engineering is shit, I suppose. So once again, Xbox external storage, you just buy it and plug it in, easy peasy. It works at exactly the same speeds as the internal drive. We've tested this. We've been able to test this for, hundreds and hundreds of days already. Well, not hundreds and hundreds, but hundreds of days already. We've tested this, and just it's not an issue anymore. Sony's drive, they can't even guarantee something that meets the specifications will work, and even if it does meet the specifications and works and fits in the slot, they're not even guaranteeing that your games are going to run at proper speeds. Sony engineers, well done. You're not hopeless and useless at all. Anyway, thanks for watching. Just thought I'd bring this to your attention. Thanks to the patrons up above there. And look out for all the pissy little Sony fanboys I've annoyed in the down below section. They're going to get really angry at this video because I haven't shown Sony any respect at all.